Picture this. A child, maybe 12 years old. Shaved head, electrodes taped to her skull. She's lowered gently into a tank of water, her body floating in silence. No sound, no light, no touch. The world disappears. The senses vanish, and suddenly her mind is somewhere else. In the show Stranger Things, this is 11. The girl raised inside Hawkins National Laboratory, forced to explore the black expanse of the void. To find people, to spy on enemies, to touch a monster that doesn't belong in this world. It's chilling, surreal, and fictional. Or is it? Because in 1954, in a laboratory funded by the United States government, a man named John C. Lilly was doing almost the exact same thing. He designed the first isolation tank, a sealed chamber where a person floated in warm water, cut off from all sensory input. He believed that the brain, freed from external distractions, could unlock hidden powers, hallucinations, altered states, maybe even psychic abilities. And this is when the CIA began to take notice. Then, under MKUltra, subjects were dosed with LSD and then placed in tanks like Lilly's. They emerged shaken, paranoid, sometimes even permanently damaged. And in the CIA reports, they typed neatly on official letterheads. The observations sounded eerily like the descriptions of 11's trips into the void. Loss of self, visions, and voices that weren't really there. Except these weren't supernatural powers. These were the shattered minds of unwilling subjects. In the Hawkins Lab, 11 is led down sterile hallways by men in white coats. The lab is her prison, but it's dressed up as science. She's told that she's special, that her abilities make her valuable, that Dr. Brenner is kind of a pseudo-father figure for her. But behind that paternal mask is exploitation. She's pushed again and again to the edge of her mind. And this isn't just sci-fi horror. It's actually a mirror. Because on the other side of history, Sidney Gottlieb and his CIA colleagues were walking similar hallways, not in Hawkins, Indiana, but in secret wings of real hospitals and prisons. Unwitting patients were giving massive doses of LSD, sometimes for days at a time. One program kept subjects on acid for over 70 days straight. Imagine that, 2.5 months without a break from hallucinations. The hallways of the Hawkins Lab may be fictional, but the corridors of MKUltra were very, very real. And in them, people lost themselves.
Everything I have done was for your own good, for your own protection.
And Henry. You kept Henry in that lab with the children. Was that for our good? Was that a right choice?
I had no idea what Henry would do. I cared for you. I loved you. I loved all of you.
In Stranger Things, 11 isn't the only child. There are others. Callie, also known as 8, with the ability to manipulate minds through illusions. The implication here is clear. Hawkins Lab ran a whole program of children, each pulled apart and tested for psychic potential. The show hints at mothers who were dosed during pregnancy and their children born altered. Disturbingly, that's not fantasy. That's actual history, or at least the shadows of it. In MKUltra documents, there are references to experiments on pregnant women. Some were given LSD to see if it could alter development. Others were subjected to electroshock. Decades later, adult survivors have claimed that they were part of quote-unquote sub-projects that targeted children, trained, in other words, as psychic warriors for the Cold War. This is where historians begin to tread very carefully, because many of the files were destroyed in 1973 on Gottlieb's orders. What we have are fragments, receipts, memos, a few surviving case reports. Enough to confirm that the program was sprawling, but not enough to know its full reach. And that's where Stranger Things fills in the blank beautifully, if I'm allowed to use that term, in their storytelling. What if MKUltra didn't just test adults? What if it raised its own 11? The horror becomes plausible because the foundation is already true.
11. Hear this?
Imagine being 11. You're placed in a chair, wires taped to your temples, and in front of you is a blindfolded man holding up cards. Circles, squares, waves. The Zener cards that are used to test psychic ability. "Tell me what you see," Dr. Brenner whispers. This is science, dressed as a parlor trick. But underneath is something much darker, the attempt to weaponize the human mind. And here's the kicker. The CIA did this too. In the 1960s, under MKUltra and later under programs like Stargate, researchers tested ESP, extrasensory perception, using the same Zener cards, just like in Hawkins, Indiana. A subject sits in a lab, an experimenter flips a card. Is it a circle? A star? The logic was absurd, yet at the same time it was deadly serious. If psychic ability could be proven, it could be weaponized for spying on the Kremlin, for predicting enemy moves, maybe even for controlling their thoughts. Now, it may sound somewhat laughable now, but at the time, we had high-ranking generals signing off on budgets worth millions to research this. And in those tests, just like 11 in the lab, the subjects were not treated as people. They were data points. Back in Stranger Things, 11 enters the void. She hears voices, finds people across oceans, even touches the Demogorgon. What we're watching isn't just sci-fi imagination, it's the actual Cold War dream and nightmare of psychic warfare. During the Cold War, both the U.S. and the Soviets funded programs to explore psychic spying. The CIA called it remote viewing, and the Soviets had their own psychic units as well. Declassified files reveal stories of subjects asked to quote-unquote see secret missile silos in Siberia from thousands of miles away, and sometimes, by chance or maybe by suggestion, they got the details right. Well, at least right enough to keep the funding flowing. It was absurd, yes, but in the fog of the Cold War, absurdity was affordable, as long as it promised an edge over Moscow. So, when 11 locates a Soviet agent across the globe from her little black void, that's not all fantasy. That's simply history with much better special effects. In Hawkins, Dr. Brenner manipulates 11 by playing father. He offers love, safety, belonging, but they're all only in an exchange for obedience. It's chilling, really. Sidney Gottlieb, the real mastermind of MKUltra, also wrapped horror in the language of care. His memos described experiments clinically, almost tenderly. Subjects are called quote-unquote patients. LSD is referred to as therapeutic aid. Even when describing days-long sensory deprivation, the tone is calm and it's very detached. Like Brenner, Gottlieb could convince himself, and his superiors as well apparently, that he was protecting America, that what he was doing was not cruelty, but somehow it was care. You see, that's the trick of power. It's masked in benevolence. Of course, in Stranger Things, 11 eventually escapes. She runs, she hides, she finds friendship, and she even finds love outside of the lab. But here's the haunting difference. In history, most MKUltra subjects never escaped. Many of the human experiments of MKUltra took place in prisons and psychiatric hospitals. One infamous example, the Allen Memorial Institute in Montreal, run by Dr. Cameron. Patients seeking help for anxiety and depression were instead subjected to psychic driving, which is endless repetitions of recorded messages combined with electroshock and drug cocktails. Some patients lost their memory entirely, and others were reduced to childlike states of mind. They never walked out into the sunshine like 11 did. They walked out broken, if they walked out at all. The Demogorgon, it's the monster from another world, but symbolically, it's also something else. The monster inside the system. The darkness that grows when governments treat people as tools. MKUltra didn't open a gate to another dimension. That we know of at least, but it did open a gate inside America's soul. And what came crawling out was paranoia, cruelty, and secrecy that still haunts us to this day. In the show, there's a chilling moment when 11 realizes she's always being watched. Every experiment, every failure, every tear observed from behind glass. The child is never truly alone. Now, imagine that same scene, but in 1955 San Francisco. The CIA called it Operation Midnight Climax, and no, that's not a joke. In a safe house disguised as a brothel, CIA agents installed two-way mirrors. Prostitutes secretly working with the agency lured unsuspecting men inside. And once in bed, the men were dosed with LSD. Behind the glass, CIA operatives sat with clipboards, watching. They observed how the drug twisted perception and broke down inhibition. The scene sounds like something that the Duffer Brothers might have written for the show until you realize that this actually happened. The lesson? In MKUltra, there was no such thing as privacy. Just like 11, every subject was a lab rat observed without their consent. In the Hawkins Lab, experiments with 11 go too far. She pushes against the boundaries of her mind, and one day she tears open a hole in reality, known as the gate. It's not just science anymore at this point, it's horror now. In MKUltra, no one tore open an actual interdimensional portal, again, that we know of, but in a way, they really didn't need to, because they were already ripping open the boundaries of identity and sanity. Take Frank Olson, for example, a scientist at Fort Detrick in 1953. He was secretly dosed with LSD by Gottlieb's team. Days later, Olson plunged to his death from a New York City hotel window. The official story was suicide, but later investigations revealed a darker possibility that Olson, disturbed by what he had seen in MKUltra, was silenced. Now, if the show Stranger Things asks, what if science ripped open another dimension, then I think that MKUltra's story asks, what if science ripped open the human soul and no one stopped it. In Stranger Things, Terry Ives, Eleven's mother, is revealed to have been part of Project MKUltra. She volunteered for a drug trial, was dosed with LSD, and later gave birth to a child with powers. This is the show's way of tying the past to the present. And here's how. 11 isn't just an experiment. She's the legacy of an earlier experiment. And history echoes here as well. We know from declassified files that pregnant women were given LSD as part of MKUltra sub-projects. The effects on their children were never truly studied, or if they were, the records were destroyed. But scattered testimonies survive. Women who remember hospital stays where quote-unquote tests were run. Children who recall fragmented memories of labs. Terry Ives may have been fictional, but she represents dozens of women whose story never made it into the official history. In Hawkins, the consequence of all this experimentation is literal. A monster. The Demogorgon breaks through. People die. The lab loses control. It's fiction, sure, but it also serves as a pretty powerful metaphor. MKUltra didn't unleash a Demogorgon, but it did unleash trauma, broken lives, paranoia, and a distrust of government that still shapes America today. The quote-unquote monster wasn't otherworldly. It was human, and it wore a mask of national security. At the heart of Stranger Things is 11's choice. Stay in the lab and remain a weapon, or escape and try to live as much of a normal life as she could. And that's what makes her story so powerful, that she chooses freedom. She chooses love. Unfortunately, the real MKUltra subjects never got that choice. They weren't given that option. They were told what they were going to do, when they were going to do it, and most all of them never received justice. When the program was exposed in the 1970s, thanks to the church committee hearings, most files had already been destroyed. Sidney Gottlieb had retired quietly, and few victims were ever compensated. And the United States government has never, I repeat, never fully admitted the scale of what was done. So what's the bigger takeaway here? Stranger Things gives us a monster from another world, a little girl with telekinetic powers, and a lab run by a villain in a white lab coat. But the show works, doesn't it? Like, it chills us to our core. And that's because it's rooted in something real. The Cold War created paranoia so deep that our government tried to weaponize the mind itself. And whether we call it MKUltra or Hawkins Lab, the lesson is still the same. When fear drives science, when secrecy trumps morality, when power treats people as tools, the real monster is always human. The story of MKUltra isn't just a story of the past. It's a warning, because the urge to control, to weaponize, to use science for power, that doesn't go away. It just finds new laboratories, new names, new children, and maybe, just maybe, it finds new monsters. Thank you for joining us for this first episode of Shadow Wars, Stranger Things and the Cold War here at the Cold War Bunker. My name is Ben James. We'll see you here in a couple weeks for episode 2.